All right, we have
And
some audio.
see here.
Let's
Now
see
what I
if
want to do is figure out why this is okay, and I want to be able to share this one, I think. Yep, I'm going to share this, and I want to share it to, okay.
we get some
Oh boy,
audio
this
here.
is getting really confused.
Oh,
Because like right now,
I've got
I'm
audio
hearing the video
from me.
that I said like a minute ago. So like I hear me talking. Like right now, I just heard myself say I'm getting really confused as I'm getting ready to go post this out onto House Frogmore. So right now, like all of this is what they'll be hearing if they actually tune in.
Yep. And we will be live here in a second, or maybe about 30
And I
seconds.
don't know when you're actually talking.
Oh, you can't hear me?
So, well, I can, but I'm not. So hold on a second. This is not your problem. This is my problem.
Ah,
Uh, so, okay. So now we should be pretty good because what I've done is just muted the actual stream. So at least I'll be able to watch the stream, sort of monitor that, see if we get anything. I don't know if we'll be able to see if we get any
all right.
comments, but we'll be able to watch them from there.
Alrighty.
All right.
Oh, I'll put
So
up
hey,
YouTube. Hold on a minute. Let me. So let's show some face, huh? Ready?
all right. Well,
Fading
I'm gonna
in.
have to go over there.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing you can't see is production view. We are now live on our. You can see our
Cool.
faces.
So we're
So
gonna see the fading in four, three, two, one. So much for the countdown. Like I started the fade in 4 3 and it was there. So countdown is just not exactly on, but that's okay because we're not supposed to launch tonight anyways. We've got a couple weeks to get that countdown correct.
right. Well, we're refining the final launch routine.
It's the final countdown.
Man.
All right. What?
Nope. That's good.
Okay. So yeah, so John may not be able to join us tonight. He's just got caught up with a customer. He invited Eddie, so maybe Eddie will jump on. Did you hear back from anybody or send out any invites?
I did send out some invites. Greg said that he was going to try to connect with us if he could, and did not hear back from Brian. He is still in Switzerland, so um, I I guess I should have probably anticipated that it was going to be a few weeks that he was going to be there. So when he gets back, hopefully we'll connect. And I have not heard back from Sean yet. I did get back to him a little bit later than I planned, just because it was kind of a busy week building up to everything. But for now, it is, and the invite's out there, and I told him to ping me if he wants to join us. So
I think what we can start doing is sort of expanding the invites, and we'll sort of do it um, like I'll invite from House Frogmore. There's a lady down here who's part of the Equity Safe team, and she's getting ready to launch a blog or some sort of thing that she's doing that sounds pretty cool. So, I could put an invite out to her. Then we have a few other people that would probably fall more on like the small business side. So we can sort of begin to expand the conversation beyond blockchain. But I think that we always have to kind of bring it back to blockchain and the economy. So no
yep.
reason not to do that over the next few weeks.
Definitely agree. We've gotten a lot of information lately, so
Next. So, all right. So, for anybody who might be tuning in and watching, you kind of might be wondering what is going on here. Well, Thursday Night Social is basically just a time to grow together. How do I say it this? Allow collaborative brands to grow together. We just reach out. We have conversations around specific topics. Lately, it's been really focused on blockchain, and it will remain that way for a while because we're converting over our software. But in the grand scheme, Thursday Night Social is really just a means of having people connect with one another, have some conversations, what's relevant to their business, and sort of promote what they're doing as they go through this. So, for anybody who might just be tuning in, my name's Chuck Lavecchi. On the other end of this is Tim Maslin, and I'll let him take it over from here.
Oh, you always throw me those softballs so delicately. Um,
Well, they're coming.
well, yeah, I
They're
should know by
pretty
now.
tough.
I know. Listen, the transitions from everything in life. It's yeah, we've definitely been heavily focused on blockchain lately, and I think that there's a lot of value and understanding because it is something that's coming down the road, and I think it's something we all need to be aware of, and we all there's a lot to learn, but yet it really does seem to be, that the more you simplify it, the easier it is to try to learn it. So, I think there's some simplicity inside of everything that's going on, except for when you get into the coding. Now,
So for those of you who are watching me, like, look off into the corner when Tim says it's easy, it's simple. Yeah, okay. What do you mean by it's easy, it's simple?
well, I mean, you've always kind of said it is the storage of text, and it's just text and transferring of text, but it's in a secured way, and it is a new and unique secured way of storing things and being able to retrieve those things very quickly. So,
So I suppose in some ways let's just go for the non-technical but maybe aware tech person, and Tim, you can kind of correct from here. I would simply say that, for those of you who understood SSL certificates back in the day, with websites, right? You'd get an SSL certificate, and that would kind of allow people to make a secure connection through you. In a way, this is doing the same thing, is that it's just allowing the exchange of text through, a public and private key, but it's done on a platform whose entire job is to make sure that key exchange is not sort of, I'm going to have an SSL certificate for a year and it's going to be very specific. It's much more like we create SSL certificates on the fly, and it's extraordinarily dynamic as to who and how you can talk with one another.
yeah, I was going to add at that point where it's kind of like assigning an SSL certificate for each unique transaction or record that's stored on the blockchain, and then it's sort of processed back to the end user according to rules. So the rules are processed by that virtual machine and like at the lowest depths of the computer. So lost my thing there. But it is processed at the lowest depths, but at the same time, it gives you a lot of control and flexibility over what you can do with that type of a transaction, as far as who can access it and then what rules
Hey,
can be
just so you
applied.
know, you just lost your thing.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, no, no, no. Like, on the stream. I know that you fixed it because now on the stream you've already fixed it. So
I'm about to lose it
we're
again.
um so actually I kind of it we won't go too deep on that side of things, but
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the smart contract tonight a little bit more based on what you were saying earlier, and I figured we could sort of apply it to what we're talking about is on the token economics of Udicci. But before we go too much further, one of the things that we're supposed to do is we're supposed to kick off each week with like what we saw in the news and what our thoughts around what we're seeing in the news are. So, what have you
You
seen in the news?
you go first. I want to hear what you. I don't want to duplicate what you're gonna say.
Oh, good one. Good one. You did not come prepared, and now you're trying to throw me a little bit of a
Softball.
curveball, softball, and I'm not prepared.
Uh huh.
So, okay, no. So, like, there has been really, I suppose, one of the interesting things, and it's something that Cheyenne and I've been talking about, is the blockchain market or the cryptocurrency market, and it's crashed and it's coming back, and what happens in this market is like every other market, it's that it responds to noise. or it responds to chatter or whatever it is. And because like on social media, that noise can kind of get all hyped up and excited. So like when we saw Doge make a run for what 70 cents because everybody was talking about Elon being on SNL, it was like, oh, what big thing's going to happen? And what we're really seeing right now is that the markets are very socially driven, and that's not like surprising in any way. It's
Right.
not at all surprising. It's just when it's about the noise, and it's whether the noise is good or bad, and that sorts to start drive things. But ultimately, it's just noise still because everybody's still trying to figure it out. So we were talking about like where do we see the market happening and where is it going, and as far as recovery, I think, and you and I talked a little bit about this. I think that we're going to see the market recover much quicker than we have in the past when crypto experienced this. But there's something else that's happening in the crypto market right now as a whole, and it's like a detachment from Bitcoin. Where forever, Bitcoin is still a leading indicator. It's still the thing that people talk about, but we're beginning to see the individual blockchains kind of step into their own identity. Cardano is a good example. Like they didn't see the wild swings in prices, right?
Right.
And at the same time, what's very interesting is they just took some huge steps forward. Cardano just like got the smart contracts up and running, and they've got their coins up and running. So very soon they're going to be right there with Ethereum. And what we didn't see was a run up of Cardano's price. I think in part is because Cardano didn't do this to try to create a stock like thing that people were buying into and causing this, the prices to run up. I think they were much more interested in trying to create the right platform. So I think that that's kind of interesting, and that this separation of the segmentation of the market is to be expected. I think that it's good. I think that ultimately it's going to strengthen the blockchain industry as a whole because we are going to have more let's say brands. Or I like how you called it the other day. You said like we're going to end up with the big three, just like we have Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. We're going to have like the big three or the big five or whatever
The big 10.
blockchains.
Yeah.
Right.
You're going to have your
And once
Fortune 50 or Fortune 10 or Fortune 100.
yeah,
Who
and
knows?
once those really start emerging, then
Mhm.
it becomes mass adoption.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I think that what you're going to find is there's going to be a lot more crossover um, libraries being created that are going to allow you to crossbreed between the different blockchains. If you want to write to Ethereum or you want to write to BSV or you want to write to Cardano, you're going to have that option inside of some of these libraries that people are going to be writing. One thing that I know right now, Script is the library that I'm writing the contracts in now, and what I've learned about that is they actually support Ethereum contracts. So it's so now I could actually write contracts that fit both BSV and Ethereum. And I would imagine that as soon as Cardano's ready, they probably will write it for that one as well. So that makes it easier for me as a developer to write more solutions across multiple blockchains.
That's interesting, right? So basically, what we like, it's S script in that instance that would be writing their language to then work, like you're saying, on Cardano. So, and I think that one thing that's interesting about what you're pointing out and bringing out there, unlike our T-Mobile and Verizon and all these other accounts, we're not going to be stuck with one network.
Right.
And it's actually very interesting is that the consumers and the small business, like everybody, the playing field's being leveled in many ways. So for anybody who's ever had to deal with, we're dealing with this thing with our former wireless carrier, and none of them are really great at customer service. Really, they just want us to use their service and be gone. And trying to resolve anything with these major companies is near impossible. And that has to end, right?
Right.
It's like the customer has to have a say in the matter. And I think that that's what we're coming to. And once that starts to become reality, there's no stopping it.
No, absolutely not. And like you said, that'll be socially driven. It's already being socially driven.
Right, right. It's gonna be very, very interesting. And to try to really even understand. And now that like it's one of those things that the more you understand nothing.
Yes.
And right when somebody talked about like we don't even have an idea of how the token thing is going to play out. I mean, it is just mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear Dr. Craig Wright speak about the different facets of blockchain and of Bitcoin SV, and it's really fascinating to hear him talk just because of the amount of knowledge that man has in his head is absolutely incredible. So just to feel small in my mind compared to what he is kind of a small part of it, but then to think that what people are going to take that technology that man created and be able to use that to accomplish, that is just you feel almost minimal.
I get that. It that's there's so much that I was having an online conversation today with somebody, and it's just one of those typical ones that, yep, somebody is convinced that they understand everything, and therefore they can tell you what you were thinking when, like I wrote the words, hey, I like pizza. And of course, that must mean something then. I like pizza, right? That's just the way our world is today. They have the right to tell me what I meant when I said that I liked pizza. Then of course they could judge me from that. And you're like, okay, we need to move so far past that because what's actually happening right now is mind boggling in its implications for humanity, for mankind, for economics, for everything as we know it.
Economies.
Economy, everything as we know it is about to be shifted again in a major way.
Yeah, this is not like a shift that is something that we have ever experienced as anybody living right now. This is a completely different shift. This is a much bigger and much more dynamic shift.
So let's kind of switch from that for a second. Well, actually, so yeah, okay. Well, there was my news thing, which was a general news thing. So, what specific news thing? Now that you've had time to look on the internet,
Oh,
look
I
for a
haven't
news
looked at the
thing.
internet. No, I was listening to you. I wanted to hear what you heard. No, so no, I've been following a lot like with what's going on in Israel. There's a lot happening, and it's really kind of scary to think that people are living in that type of a situation where they're constantly worried about bombs and the the sirens and stuff going off. I mean, you were in Alabama. We had the tornado warnings. That always, that was always a trigger whenever you heard those things go off because they were so loud and obnoxious. But that's I definitely have been trying to consider them in prayer and stuff. But there's a lot happening there, but then there's a lot happening in other parts of the world. Like this whole thing, I'm just now learning about what's been going on in Haiti, and I wasn't aware of how bad it had gotten in Haiti, and I'm trying to catch up with what's going on. But as recent as I think it was as recent as February of this year, where the ruler, or I don't know what they were called over there, the dictator, it refused to step down from his position, and now like he controls things. And then they were talking about just the gang violence and just watching people have to go out in the streets with guns to protect their loved ones every single day, and then just have people coming into their home and dragging them out into the street and just killing these people for no reason. It's sickening to see how much of this is happening in the world, and but whatever spirit is happening right now, whatever thing is coming at us, and it's happening all around the country. Country. You see these things that are going on where people are just randomly shooting people on the freeway because they got cut off. And it's over stupid reasons that we're so triggered over the little things now, and it's because as we've watched social media, and a lot of it has to do with COVID and being locked up and the emotions and the turmoil, and there's so many factors in there. But just to see it coming out in the way that it's coming out right now, and to consider that it's only going to get worse before it gets better. And so, my prayers definitely have been for the country and for what's going on, but for us to be moving in the direction that we're supposed to be moving, so that we can start fighting back on some of the stuff, because a lot of it has to do with poverty.
Yeah, it's oppression, right? And ultimately it really is a spirit of oppression. And what comes to mind as you were talking is like Leviathan, the whole idea of this like serpent squeezing the life out of something. It is doing everything it can to just squeeze the breath out of people. And I think that that's what we're really seeing is a lot of that noise we were talking about is um well, it's a good example actually. That conversation I was having today was around the Second Amendment conversation that's going on, and I don't go too deep into that, but whatever. Somebody said, well, what's the purpose of the Second Amendment? And I just said simply to protect to protect free citizens from a tyrant governance, or a governance of tyranny. However, I said it. That was it. That in the grand scheme of things, that's what it's for. Of course, I was wrong. I was corrected. I was told I couldn't think that way. I was told that everything about my logic was wrong based on my very 7 words. And then it came to somebody else was explaining, and they said, no, you know what? The person was arguing there's no tyranny. I'm like, okay, whatever. The reality is, like, what happened? And of course, it all had to be about Trump. And I'm not trying to go down the Trump train. I'm just trying to say that there was no tyranny in the United States. That's what I want to say is there was no tyranny in the United States. People were not being drug out of their homes. We did have the president step down. You didn't have to like the way that it went down. The people that did the insurrection were arrested. There are charges going against them. Law and order prevailed, which is exactly what you want in a society that's near eruption, right? We are near eruption.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other places that eruption is already happening.
Yes.
People are being drugged out of their homes and being shot on the spot. Not only in Haiti, it's happening, in India.
Yes.
Christians are being brought out of their houses and they're being killed for their religion. I'm sure that there's areas around the country that it's happening to Muslims. Around the world, I'm sorry.
Well, it's happening to Asians right now.
Right. It's happening all over.
Yes.
Like, so kind of like going back to you're just, we're none of us are that smart. None of us are that like aware. Like, let's be more aware of what's going on around the globe. And then maybe we can start to be thankful for what we're doing here. But the other person that was in the conversation, and this is more where I was going with it, he explained the Second Amendment right as the pressure valve. He's like, you never want the pressure valve to actually have to be used, because that means that the people of the country rose up with their guns to protect one another from the tyranny of governance.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing in Haiti.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about in Haiti. That's why you do that, because you have to protect your own family from being drugged out of the house.
Yep.
Do I think that's going to happen here in the United States? God forbid. Lord, please do not allow that to happen in the United States.
I can't imagine it would, but man, oh man, it's just amazing.
It would be foolish to think it can't.
Yes, exactly. And that's the problem. Have we not learned from our past? But the problem is we want to bury our past so we can't learn from it. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, and there's a whole other thing about that. Right, because, if you actually don't agree with the current prevailing political narrative, then you're just a fool.
Yeah.
It's like, what, and that's the other thing too, is that political narratives are now fact.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways,
every single one of them. Every single one of them.
Which comes into, and it's really not for anything. This is a great kind of parallel for blockchain, because like blockchain and token economics relies on governance. As we were talking about earlier, the actual like blockchains and the coins that you join and the economies that you have, they're going to have their own governance. And
Yes.
just like, wait, what does that mean? It's like, here's the thing, you're going to actually have to start thinking about governance.
Yes, actually, that was one of the conversations that, or one of the interviews that I watched the other day with Craig Wright. He actually mentioned, get this, Medici in the House of Medici. So I was like, yes, oh, finally somebody connected. I was like, he would get the story of Udicci because of the fact that we connected with Medici, and not very many people know that story, and it's it kind of goes back in our history a little bit, but it's exactly what we're talking about, governance.
It's our cousin Medici.
The
It's they,
Medici, yeah.
they had a little money, and how'd they come up with the money? They came up with another accounting column. Actually,
Yeah.
what's interesting, I actually recently read something, and I didn't really go too deep into it. It seems as though dual column accounting may have existed prior to House Medici, but they were the ones who sort of used it with their massive wealth and basically created fiat currency. Okay, was it really
Yeah.
truly fiat currency? No, it
No,
was
but
more
it
truly about
was.
fractional asset lending at that point. But it's interesting. It's definitely interesting that like we can trace it back to there. And that itself is not wrong. And this is like where we talk about people have to get into economics and start to understand, derivatives and currency contracts and asset contracts. And none of those are easy things to wrap your head around.
Right.
So you better start finding the people who you trust to help grow with and get in those circles, because this isn't going to happen over the next 20 years. It's going to happen
No.
over the next 20 months.
Yeah. Yeah. We're 2 to 3 years out from that. Easy. When you look
Yeah.
at how quickly the internet started to have an impact in everyday household from 1993 to even 1998, 5 years, it's incredible. Every time we take a technological leap forward from all the way back from the printing press, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way up to now, every time we do, we take those steps they're much smaller and much faster. And that's exactly what's happening here. So probably half the time, 2.5 years, 3 years at most.
I would think so. I mean, that's basically going Moore's law in reverse.
Yep.
Which again, Moore's law didn't hold up completely when it came to computing power, but whatever.
Yeah.
But hey,
Well,
let's
and
kind of
yeah,
let's
we haven't even talked about quantum computing yet.
right and quantum is going to be a whole nother part of this. But let's jump off for a second to
Yeah.
the smart contract. Let's kind of come back and talk about what we were talking about earlier about what the smart contract is. And then what we could do is sort of talk through what we currently have as for our token economics, right? Which we have very limited governance. We want greater because the economics should be kind of thing. So so what?
Hey, Chuck, hold on a minute. There's some internet things going on. Hold on. Let's see if we can
You
let it catch up. Hold on. The internet is messing up. You there? Are you there?
Yep.
Okay. All right, you're back.
So I lost internet.
No, mine went red, but I don't know why mine would go red. Let me double check to make sure.
It's all good. I'm still frozen inside on oh no, you know what though? Because I'm watching the stream. So I'll let you know when I start to see the stream. We can continue talking. If we don't see the stream in a minute, we'll be good.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so
We'll fix it from there. All right, so going to the smart contract, and we'll kind of go back to what you were talking about today, and have you sort of introduced what a smart contract is, and then we'll go into sort of the token economics of Udicci with what we currently have about it, and we'll go a little bit deeper dive there. It looks, and we'll go a little bit deeper dive there. It looks like the stream is still buffering online.
Hold on a minute. Let me go ahead and pop that off. Bear with me for a second. Okay, I think we're okay.
Actually, I think I have. Let me go check Discord. All right, you're not on video on Discord right now?
I just turned off for a minute.
Okay,
I'm back.
so all right, so we're good there. I'm gonna jump into Facebook. I had to close out. Might have been something on Facebook that got hung up here while I was watching that.
Okay. The joys of trying to do production while doing all this, right?
Okay, good. So that looks good. So we're
Okay.
getting that there. All right. So once again,
Smart contracts.
yeah. So all that audio should be on there. So yeah,
Yep.
smart contracts.
So, boy, to try to raise up a level, what a smart contract is. Basically, smart contracts are code objects that you write, which provide a kind of a higher level code access to the lower level code. So it's kind of like an API to write the code that goes to the blockchain in a transaction, and it manages the data. You can actually code against it. So you can actually put methods. For instance, you can actually write a tic-tac-toe game on a smart contract using a smart contract. And the game would be the smart contract, the tic-tac-toe game, and it manages each player placing a bet, following through the game all the way to the point of completion. So, and all of that is written using the transactions, the data stored for the tic-tac-toe game. The state of it is stored on a transaction on the blockchain, but the interface is all written in JavaScript, and a smart contract allows you to make the connection from the blockchain code into the JavaScript coding language. So, I mean, it's
So let me try.
without
Yeah, so
getting
this
too
is
technical.
Well, I mean, so yeah, I mean, obviously it's beyond. I mean, so if we let's try it this way, the smart contract is the executable, right? If people want to think about a little executable code, and what it like, you know, when you're over there playing Minesweeper, there's a little executable back in the day, and you'd pick a block, and that block would open up, or it'd have a number underneath it. And, you know, if you had, I can't remember what it was, 2, 3 bombs, you're done, however you set that up, whatever the game was. But effectively, each click of a block on Minesweeper was a transaction, and that transaction would be kept in a file. And just think about it this way: let's say that somebody was using an old notepad file, a text file, and you know it had however many blocks were on that Minesweep thing. Let's just use 100, so it was 10 by 10. And you know, click one it said click one was it in position 3 by 8, so 3 over, 8 down. Boom. Now that is written to that text pad, and great, this is great. Now the user does another one, and it's 5 over, 7 down. Okay, that one's good, and that's written as number 2. So the transactions are all being kind of kept track of in that text file. So if we wanted to, we could go back and play that game in the same order that the user played it. But the whole while, Minesweeper kind of knew what to do with those clicks. It knew that under certain numbers would be the number 3 because there was 3 bombs around it, or the number 2 because there was 2 bombs around it, or it was just blank and it opened up a whole bunch of squares at one time. And it was that underlying minesweeper, again, I'm going to call it an executable, that was running the game, and the person playing the game was just kind of creating an agenda. I'm sorry, a list of transactions. And if you ever wanted to watch the game play again, that little executable just run against those things. And what is that then? That would be the smart contract running against the blockchain.
Um, in some ways, yes. It wouldn't be the smart contract manages all the transactions being written to the blockchain. And then once you have them written, then you just pull it back out. The smart contract knows how to get the data from it to unlock that data that was there. So, yes,
So the smart contract wouldn't necessarily then maintain the state of the game board, is what you're saying?
the JavaScript does. It
The
writes it to
JavaScript.
using, yeah, it uses the contract to write the information for the transactions.
Okay. All right. So the JavaScript I got it. So the smart contract would generate the JavaScript that would be held in each transaction that would keep the state of the board.
Um, Not necessarily in that way. No, the data being stored is actually just binary data. The type of data that you can store in a smart contract is not as robust as what is just anything. You can't just put objects or stuff like that. It's storage of strings, but you can do binary data is the best that what most people try to use. So the
Okay.
data, it doesn't store a lot of code like what you're talking about. That would be stored as part of the data. That'd be different.
All right. So generally scrap my exact executable strength, but the idea is there.
Yeah.
Right. The idea was that like you're clicking some blocks and it's keeping the transaction on the other side. And,
Yep.
somewhere between BVM and again, when we use the term BVM, that's the Bitcoin virtual machine. All the different blockchain, not all of them. Mostly blockchains have some version of that. I think they all probably have some version of that. And it's basically the operating system of the blockchain that you build your programs on. So somewhere between the smart contracts, the transactions, and the blockchain virtual machine is where all of those three things come together.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what does all that mean? Well, that just went way, way, way deep. And anybody who was listening that was not at all technical is like, what are these guys talking about? And the answer is, I really don't know. We make it up on the fly. And that's what we're doing here. But
Well, what it allows us to do
well, let's
is
take it now. What we'll do is we'll kind of jump through. So Udicci's getting ready to launch our coin, our currency. When we also will be doing our launch of our first NFT, we're going to be putting a little baggie of coins in
goodies.
the NFT. So whoever gets the NFT gets a baggie of coins, and yay. So, anyways, before we launch the actual coins, we need to set up, if you will, why do the coins exist? How many coins are there? What are we going to do with the coins? How do the coins get allocated? And that's where we begin to talk about governance. And the entirety of the coin itself is governed by the smart contract, correct?
It allows us to, yes. I mean, we have to define the rules around that and such, but yes,
Right.
yes.
So now, like the rules themselves, so let's just kind of get an idea of what it is that we're talking about here. So what we're looking at doing is we're going to do an initial issuance of 80 billion coins, and we're not capping it. We're just simply we have some other rules that are going to go inside of this, and I'll kind of run down what these kind of rules are. So as an example, we're going to issue 80 billion coins. We're not setting a cap on it. We're saying that there's no additional coins can be created until a governance board is created and policies are created. We have an allocation billion funds to a charity wallet, and 1 billion to you and 1 million to myself. Um, we have 5 billion going to a treasury to pay for services and development. Then it says the treasury spending initially requires a vote and a dual signature. And then I'm thinking we have a par value, and we'll talk through that. And then simply then later on I offered a proposal, and that has to do with founders bonus and some things that we want to do to help kind of encourage growing what it is that we're doing. So, basically that's a big part of it, is creating that piece there. So what happened here? Did I lose you?
Nope, I'm here. I just I shut my video off because I was noticing a little bit of hesitation on the stream, so I just shut my video down. And on Discord, I've actually made you the bigger picture, so you're highlighted while you're talking all that stuff.
Got it. That's why I just got, okay, so the stream just kind of flipped over, and okay, we got that. So anyway, so those are the kinds of rules, right? And
Right.
now let's walk through that. So you're going to have to put those rules into a smart contract as JSON.
That well, I don't know exactly how we'll have to store that yet. There's certain rules about the structure of some of the contracts depending on what type of information you're storing. Like if you're doing coins, there has to be certain things like a foundation that you have to meet. And then on top of that, we would have methods that would be called, which would determine whether or not the person has access, or the rules of that start to implement the rules, the process behind it, I guess is the way to say it, right? And then from there, the data that's being stored can be, I mean, we have a lot of flexibility inside of the data being stored, but we have a lot of, it's not like just a free for all like JavaScript. We have, it's a little bit more structure of a structured language, and it's a very strict structured language because that's where the limitations of the Bitcoin virtual machine come into play, and that gets into the scripting language low level stuff.
Okay, so like these rules then, and this is kind of what we have to look at is, what I would wonder is how do you then enforce these rules, right? Like I get that the actual contract itself is going to be enforced, but how do we indicate that a governing board has been created? Do we actually have to create a policy of what, like, so yeah, those kinds of things.
Well,
And then
we
how
could
do we
actually do, we could get creative with that. So my first thing that comes to mind is we have this one initial NFT that we create that's the founding board NFT, and then we transfer that over to, we use that to create these NFTs where we're passing on value, and that group of NFTs then become part of the board. And once we get to a certain number, now we have a quorum, and now we can actually move forward. Something like that.
right? So that gets into the idea we were talking about the other day, is then we're actually creating different versions, like these NFTs, but then are we just creating, so let's say that we're going to create, I think in that case, I'm following what you're saying, is that we would actually create a smart contract, which we would call governance board.
Yep.
And that would be considered complete when there's 5 people voted on whatever we come up with. So that would have its own rules.
Yep.
And then its own smart contract. And then as that is filled, it will actually look at the transactions associated with it, and then it can tell the other smart contract.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and we can actually, like we were talking about oracles earlier, we could actually use oracles through our protocol to then start to mediate between that type of an NFT transactions, or those types of NFT transactions, to get to.
Why would you need an oracle if it's on network?
It's still considered outside of the transaction. Anything off of the transaction itself, I think you need an oracle to connect to.
Okay. Yeah, I was under the impression that the oracles were off chain, not off transaction.
It can be off chain, yes.
It can be sure. That would obviously, right.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it went to
outside connectivity.
Right. Well, this wouldn't be outside though, right? Because it would still be on chain.
It's considered outside because it's not part of that transaction or not part of the block.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't even think you can interact with the same on block on like in same blocks. If you have like a million transactions in a block, I don't think you can. I mean, you can find out the other transactions that are part of the block, but I don't know how they would. I think you need oracles to connect with that information unless you're coding it in JavaScript, not as part of the smart contract.
All right.
See,
So
here's the
anyways,
thing
yeah,
about Chuck, real quick. The thing about oracles, they get processed by the BVM, so that happens before it comes back to the JavaScript. So that's part of that low level authentication. That's that lower tier.
so is an Oracle something then that you also code? It's just a different version of a.
Yeah, I'm not really up to speed on the oracles, so I really can't talk. I know enough about them to be dangerous, and that's as far as I went.
All right. So then I guess one of the interesting things we should be thinking about as we do this, I understand that like I don't see that Udicci, the platform. Well, I suppose it really could just create the smart contract, couldn't it? We
Yes.
could just use a lot of just text
Yeah.
that we actually put in then.
Well, that's where I said every record could have like a mediate function that somebody could call when they get access to it. And that mediate would connect them to our protocol and our platform.
Okay. All right. So again,
Yep.
have a little bit because now that went really deep,
Sorry.
going too far into the actual. No. I'm just saying like taking that back out to the smart contract. So we've got the coins going. We've got 5 weeks till we're going to be doing the hello world. And like we said, sometimes weather delays do happen, which is simply to say, if we need more than 5 weeks, weather delays do happen. um, but I think it's cool. I mean, I think it's definitely cool that we're starting to zero in on the like again the token economics of it, and then to kind of bring it back a little bit. One of the reasons I want to do the limited governance is because not only do I think it's wrong to create too much definition initially. Um, it's like I want it to be open so that more people feel like they're able to contribute. But I do want to recognize some of the values that we have in the brand and which is like, you've invested a lot, you get compensated for that. And if you invest a lot to help us move forward, you get compensated for that too. And then we want to begin working with people who will help us create an economy that is um, good, fair. Uh, and what does that look like? And I don't know. And I think that that's kind of the stuff we need to have conversations around.
So, in general, what you're saying is that we need more people joining our conversation to kind of help to define what this type of thing should be.
Yeah,
More
and I don't
voices.
think that it's a fast conversation either, right? Because
No.
I tend to think that like that founder's bonus. Like I said, I want to put a par value for us, but ultimately, my first goal is to see us get to it being worth a nickel, right? We,
Right.
we see that like a Dogecoin can be worth 30 cents. It ran up to 60, and that had, as we know, like it had a lot behind it. It had a lot of social conversation behind it. It didn't have much in the way of technology. It has value in part because
Right.
it didn't have much in the technology. It wasn't greatly defined. It is able to be redefined and used in that capacity. So, following a little bit of that thinking, and 5 cents is no easy task. And if we can get a lot of people on board to help us kind of further the heart of this matter and create through the community commerce model a way that people can um you know
Exchange value.
yeah, I was going to say like just kind of determine the lifestyle that they want to live and build it,
Yep.
but and I guess here's the other side of where I'm at this is like there's a lot of people who aren't going to build, There's a
Yep.
lot of people who are going to sit back and watch. There's a lot of people who are just going to hear about it and do nothing. And then when it all comes to pass, they're going to go, well, what about us?
Right. Right. Well, it's like you see so many people jumping on, and then they get so directed in the way they're approaching things that they like. I look at Greg or some of the people that have joined the Smart Ledger team, and they get very focused because you get excited. You get to see like things start to get created. Your mind starts to look at the
Yeah.
technology and the capability of it, and you start to go, holy cow, I could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And you and I have lived that life for 10 years with Udicci. That's why it's such a great
It's
thing.
painstaking.
Yes, absolutely. And your head goes "Poof," and you go, uh-oh. And just so then because you can't focus on any one thing, and then you end up 10 years later trying to figure out, and then the blockchain comes and you say, we were built for this time. So
Yeah, it is so hard, right? Because it does go everywhere and has such an impact, and it's hard. It's hard, but people need to be getting involved, and they will. They are. It's happening, right? And
yeah, there's a lot more people jumping on board, and I actually I set up a new bank account this past like about a week ago, and when I went in, I started talking to the banker that was helping me, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, she starts asking me what I do, and I'm like, yeah, we're talking about crypto and stuff, and she's like, oh, I want to start investing, and she goes, how do I do it? Perfect. Okay. So I give her some things. She write down some notes, and I'm working that afternoon and here at home, and I get a phone call from my banker, and I'm like, "Uh-oh." Pick it up. She goes, "Hey, when you said to get on here, now what do I do here?" And she started asking me questions about getting around Coinbase, and she went in and put a whole bunch of money up into I think she chose like two or three coins or something like that. So it was really kind of cool, to see that she had gotten on board and was really excited about it. And, and now to look at that from the banking world, somebody in the banking world is looking at this going, hello, I need to be a part of this.
here is, I think, what the most challenging thing that I've encountered so far is to stop thinking in terms of dollars.
Yeah.
And we talked about this the other day, is like that we need to start thinking in terms of peer-to-peer economies.
Yep.
And that means peer-to-peer resource sharing. That means peer-to-peer exchange, peer-to-peer development, peer-to-peer architecture, peer-to-peer governance, right? I mean,
Yep.
there's a lot that goes on with that, but it's peer-to-peer. And one of the things that as soon as people think right now, crypto, they think like the stock market, except for I can make a lot of money. And money to them means US dollar
Yeah.
bills.
And that's
And
not the case.
everything we do right now, naturally, we sit there and go, well, how much is that worth in US dollar bills?
Right.
Like, how much is that Ferrari? How much is that boat? How much is
Right.
that land in US dollar bills? How much is my time worth in US dollar
Right.
bills? And that's the change that has to happen. We
Yep.
need to start figuring out what's the value. Even, like, hey, look, we understand that your electric bill still needs to be paid in US dollar bills. But if you want an economy in a world where resources are used better, then you have to stop thinking in terms of US dollar bills, because there's a lot of money in the transaction of US dollar bills, and we call it the banking system. And there's a ton of money, and I think it was Greg that said the other day that we typically only realize 8% of every US dollar bill that we earn.
Mm-hmm.
We get 8 cents value out of it, which means that 92% of the value of that dollar bill is lost to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
invested in something else. Now, part of that's road and infrastructure, and that stuff's good. But a big chunk of that, a large portion of that, is the people who are just creating these dollar bills. And guess what? we're now creating currencies. So we need to start valuing our own currency the same way we value this US dollar bill.
Yeah, and I think we're going to start to see more of that as we start to see more adoption of cryptocurrency. And, you're going to start to weigh it against more of the value of, how the crypto is doing in comparison to yours. And you'll be able to see that right on the fly, which one you measure yours in compared to what way they measure theirs in. And, if it's Satoshi's versus whatever, whatever Cardano's base is, you've got these two different things. It's simply an exchange of value, and in the moment we can tell in the moment from the blockchain what the value is of that particular coin. So how, to me it's like once people start to take the simplicity of what we're creating by creating that instant understanding of the value exchange, it's, you're going to start to see some massive moves. And another point, as you were talking about, we don't pay our electricity bill in, we pay it in fiat. The problem with that thought process is right now all the energy companies have always been heading towards the most current technology. They're already set up to be able to transmit information from meter reads. They could easily go out and for minimal dollars now with a Pi, Raspberry Pi type device, they could go out and start transmitting meter reads. And then once a day, they create a transaction, and then you settle up with them every single day for the electricity that you used. And that could all be handled through blockchain transactions.
Yeah, and just that simple idea of how the thing can be used. What people don't understand is the amount of money involved in the collection of
Yes,
electric. I don't know the dollar amount, the amount, but I'm going to
it's
bet you off
ridiculous.
the top of my head, it's between 12 and 30%, right? So
Yep.
like 12 and 30% of your bill, I'm just guessing, I could be way
Yeah.
off. It could only be 5%, it could be 2%. But the point is, if you could better use the resources you have, whether it's a 2% improvement per month, which, or per year, it's still an improvement.
Right.
And if we could begin improving those efficiencies across the board,
Yep.
that's what we need to do.
Well, remember when I lived in Tampa, I worked for that company that we did the RF, or part of the stuff that they handle was the RF equipment that actually went around and it signaled from the meters, the meter reads to the trucks as the trucks drove by it. So the drivers didn't have to get out. It cut the amount of time the drivers were spending, and they were able to reduce our staff by like 20 to 30%. Duke Energy. That's,
Yeah,
that's
and now they're not even going to have to have the drivers out there
drivers.
because they can
Yes.
just put them back out
Internet.
over
Yeah.
over the internet, and that's where it's done easily. But
Yep.
all right, well, I guess we're at 8 o'clock for tonight,
Yeah.
and we don't have anybody else on for the after social.
No. No.
So that's unfortunate. So I do wish John came on. They did the release of their Cardano buds, which I'm trying to understand more completely what they are. But effectively, you remember the old Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like the playing decks, the
Yeah.
different cards that people play? That's what this is, right? And they're just different buds. They've got like OG, and they've got all these different things that are on them. And they've got a nice little network of people or community that are already swapping them. They're already like paying each other for them and building up the value of that card. And it's an interesting thing because in some ways I'm starting to get what the NFT is now. It's really just a more fun way of building your currency.
Yeah.
That you actually have
Yes.
like we're saying we're gonna put a little bag of money
Yes.
in with the NFT. It's not about the bag of money. It's about
Yep.
actually visualizing
Yep.
the token.
Yep. Well, and it's going to be fun with the NFTs because there's so many different things you can do with them, and it's it's the creativity of how the token is created, and what's great about it is just how simple it is to implement, and that type of a contract from that perspective. But the other thing is there's a whole community. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of communities of gaming different things. Like you think about Call of Duty or all these different with the weapons and stuff like that, or you go into you go into the car racing games, and you could buy different cars and stuff like that. In the farming simulator world, they have modders that create these mods, and I'm dying because I've got like all these connections in that community right now through YouTube, and I'm going, okay, well, all we need to do is just start putting some of these out to NFT, and now you have that. It's absolutely beautiful. So I'm excited to
Yeah.
to be able to present what we're going to be bringing to market with the platform. I think that we're it hits a little bit next level with it, which is cool.
No, it absolutely does. It's kind of fun. Alrighty. Well, I guess we're good for the night. Any closing thoughts?
No, stay safe, be blessed.
All right.
God is good.
All right, sir. Yeah, he is. All right. Talk to you later.